Hey there everyone, Editor Beanie here with a little forward for you. So a couple years ago, before I had Laurel as my co-host, I was actually working on the Weeb years with another friend of mine named MaeMae. Unfortunately, she had to dip out of the project early on, but we did manage to record a couple episodes together. What you're about to listen to is the original first episode of the Weeb years. I'm still really happy with it, and I hope you'll enjoy it too. Hello, and welcome to the Weeb Years, the only podcast that is not gluten-free. I am your host, Beanie, and with me is my lovely co-host. Say hello.
Hello, I'm MaeMae.
And this is a look back at the media and culture of the Western anime boom. 90s, 2000s, that sort of thing. You might ask, hey, Beanie, MaeMae, why are you making an anime podcast? There's enough of those already. In fact, there's far too many of those. Why don't you stay in your fucking lane?
I don't know. We really like anime, so let's talk about anime.
And on today's episode, we are going to start off this fun new podcast project with Chobits.
Yay, Chobits!
Chobits, it was initially a manga published in 2000 by Clamp, which is a very big name. I don't know, I looked it up. They don't really do a whole lot anymore. The most recent thing they did was just a sequel to Cardcaptor Sakura. But I don't feel like Clamp is nearly... it's still a big name, but I don't think they're nearly as big of a name as they were, back in the day, so to speak.
For sure. My experience with them is very little, but, their name is on all of the big stuff back then, which is pretty amazing.
Right? They had, the biggest one, I think, for them is probably Cardcaptor Sakura. Mm-hmm. Either Cardcaptors or Magic Knight Grey Earth. That's another really big one. I think they also had one called... they had one... It's one of those where, do I pronounce the X or not? Because it's spelled XXX Holic, but I've heard some people say that it's like a Hunter x Hunter thing, and you're just supposed to call it Holic.
Oh no, I have always called it XXX Holic, because that's what someone said to me.
They were a very big name back in the day, and their name still definitely carries weight. If you see, ooh, this is a Clamp project, or oh shit, this is a Clamp project.
Oh yeah.
Because the thing about Clamp, even when Clamp is bad, which, let's not split hairs, there's some bad Clamp stuff.
Yeah.
Even when it's bad, it's inevitably interesting.
And it's always absolutely gorgeous.
Yes, well, manga, yes. Anime depends on the studio they work with.
I'll concede to that for sure.
Actually, speaking of Cardcaptors, or Cardcaptor Sakura, Chobits was the first thing they did after they finished the Cardcaptor Sakura manga. To give I know I said it came out in 2000, or the manga came out in 2000, but to give you a better idea of the time frame, this was immediately after Cardcaptor Sakura manga finished.
That explains the amazing fashion.
Oh, absolutely. The anime was produced by Madhouse, which is another, big name for the time. And it started airing in April of 2002. The series was licensed by Geneon later that year and released on DVD in North America. In 2011, Funimation rescued the license and released the series on Blu-ray and some new DVDs, and now you can find it on Crunchyroll.
I love that it's accessible now.
It is very... accessibility of anime, I'm sure, is going to be a very big conversation topic for us later down the line.
I have lots of words to say about the accessibility of anime in the early aughts. Oh, holy cow.
Oh, I was talking about the accessibility of anime currently.
Oh, that too.
But again,
let's talk about the contrast.
That's something we can talk about at a later date for sure. But yes, thankfully, Chobits, I almost said Cardcaptor Sakura.
Not yet.
Not yet. But yes, thankfully, Chobits, very readily available. Very readily sounds weird to say. But yes, thankfully, Chobits readily available, easily found on Crunchyroll. Something I found in research, because I'm sure when you were watching Chobits on Crunchyroll like I did, you noticed there was 24 episodes, right?
Yes, I did.
Depending on the sources you look at, some sources will say that there's 26 episodes. That is because when the show was originally airing, there was two, clip show recap episodes. I want to say it was like episodes 9 and 18 or something like that. But basically all modern releases, including the Crunchyroll version, gets rid of the two recap episodes. So that's not something we had to watch.
Oh, thank God. I can't stand recap episodes.
I've also found out that there's a single episode OVA set directly after the finale of Chobits. From what I found, it follows the two tiny Persicons, Sumomo and Kotoko, as they run on an errand to bring Chi her panties because she forgot them. Doesn't seem like we're missing much. I actually didn't find out about that until I had finished watching the show. I debated, MaeMae, we gotta make sure to watch the OVA, but as I was looking into it, I was like, you know what, fuck it.
Yeah, one of the episodes, I'm surprised you said panties instead of underpants, honestly. Underpants!
And with that, we may as well get into talk about the actual show, why don't we?
Let's talk about Chobits!
Yeah. So, before we watched this, one of the reasons that we picked this as the show to cover for the first episode of the podcast is we thought there'd be a fun little back and forth because I had never seen this before, but you have.
Yes, I would like to say that I watched it as it was coming out, but I'm not going to claim that because I'm old and I don't remember exactly, but I have been a fan of Chobits for at least as long as it has been out.
Chobits for me, back in the day, it was something I was always incredibly aware of, because something we need to stress very strongly throughout this entire podcast is Chobits was fucking huge back then.
Absolutely enormous, and I'll tell you this, I was saving this. So I was at an anime con last week before, and there were cosplayers dressed as Chi.
Oh my god.
They were going to the Lolita Tea Party, and there were several of them, which I was certainly surprised by, but delighted to see.
You're just sitting at the convention, you're like, I know that!
I was like, wait a minute, I just watched that! That's amazing.
This is shockingly topical.
Yes.
So, something I was immediately taken aback by as I started watching is I was, for some reason, this whole time, because again, I knew of Chobits back in the day, I've always known it existed, I knew it was huge, I never really knew anything about it. The only thing I really knew about Chobits for the longest time was it was about a guy who finds a robot girl, computer girl, and falls in love with her. And that's entirely it. For some reason, I had been under the idea that this was like a drama. I was surprised at how much of a comedy this series was.
I'm really glad that was a surprise for you. That's something I actually took some issue with, was the series starts out pretty, I'm gonna say, hilarious at times. And then it ramps up into drama, like hardcore drama, which I was not expecting. We talked about this a little bit before, but I was really surprised to find that this was not a shoujo title.
Yeah, no, this is actually a, you had trouble pronouncing this word when we were talking about this. It's actually a seinen series.
Seinen. I'm gonna get it right one day.
For shits and giggles, can you say how you thought it was pronounced?
Sign in.
Sign into your account with your password.
Listen, as long as you use the clicky mouse in the mid-episode bump.
Yes, they're called eye catches.
They're called what?
Those little, that anime have, especially, I don't think a lot of modern anime do it anymore. God, the discussion between, just the standards of anime production back then and now that streaming is a thing is going to be fun in the future. But yeah, Back then, almost every anime would have, like, it would tell the audience, hey, the commercial break is going to start now. And then they would have it again when the commercial break ended to be like, hey, come back from the kitchen, come back from pouring yourself that glass of tea, the anime's starting again. And those little segments are called eye catches.
Interesting. I didn't know that those had a name other than bumps.
Bumper, I think, is more of a Western term for those. Eye catch, as far as I'm aware, eye catch is a very distinctly, like, Japan anime term for that sort of thing.
I love that. And, you know, when these things were airing on TV and there were commercials like that, I think it's really nice. I think it's a nice touch to grab your attention back to what we're watching.
Oh, for sure.
And I think in the era of streaming, it gives you a nice little, kind of like a little break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do. And I do, you know, just in general, like, hey, I'm fucking old person. I remember thing from old time, like the sound of that super clicky, like, you know that the mouse that they used for that eye catch sound, that thing had to have had a trackball in it. You can just hear it.
Oh, absolutely. That little hard-boiled yolk was so in there.
Yeah, no, I was surprised how much of a comedy it was at first. Like you said, it definitely gets more dramatic as things go on. And it sounds like that was maybe a point of contention for you. I actually liked when things got dramatic. I thought some of the best stuff in the show is when it started to ramp up the drama.
Oh no, I did not have an issue with it. I wanted more of it. That's...
Oh, okay.
And I kind of hate to start out with a bit of a negative, but that's the thing that really took me back with this one, or took me aback with this one, is that it starts off so goofy and it ramps up into the drama so hard and fast. I really wish there was more opportunity to, like, simmer with these characters and simmer with their interpersonal relationships and problems while still maintaining that sense of goofiness that we have at the beginning.
That is this is going to sound condescending. I don't mean it to be. That is a very interesting take that I think we're going to have a lot to talk about between our two different views of the show as we go on. Mm-hmm. I want to say right up front, because we did decide to watch the dub for this. The dub is amazing, especially for the time period, I think. Because let's be honest, a lot of early dubs from, like, especially like the early 2000s, not great.
No.
But not only did the dub cast do a really good job, but the names on the cast, like the roster, is just full of, like, early 2000s A-listers. You got fucking Crispin Freeman, of all people, as Hideki, the main guy, who others might know as, like, Alucard from Hellsing, and fucking and fucking Itachi Uchiha from Naruto.
Yeah, we definitely have a star-studded cast on this one for that era, which is, I mean, I think that's kind of typical for such a big name like Clamp.
Oh, for sure. Other really big names out there. I just want to go through a few of these because it's so, I guess, impressive to me and so noteworthy. But along with Crispin Freeman, you got Michelle Roof. I think it's either Roof or Ruff. I'm not sure. Sorry, Michelle. But she plays Chi, who is also Rukia from Bleach. Tony Oliver as the neighbor friend Shinbo, who his big thing is he plays the English version of Lupin the Third. I loved his performance. Like, one of the standout performances of the whole show was Tony Oliver as Shinbo to me. Like, I thought he did a perfect job just encapsulating, like, the cheerful buddy friend archetype, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely. And I absolutely agree. It felt so natural to pair with some of Hideki's, like, inner monologue and kind of really excitable character.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'll point out a couple more of the big standout voice actors as we kind of get introduced to them in the show as we're going through. Another big standout, the music. Like, oh my god, the music in the show. Like, the OP is great. The intro song is so fucking catchy. I don't think I skipped it a single time in, like, the whole 24 episodes that I watched.
If I hadn't been on a time crunch, I would have watched it every single time. I play the song on Beat Saber regularly. Even before we had conceived of this podcast, I adore this song.
It's so fucking cute. Not even just that, just the entire soundtrack of the show. The score was just, the songs were great and they always felt like they were being used well. Like anytime there was like a dramatic scene going on or something interesting happening, I always caught like, oh, the music in this great.
Absolutely. I don't think I was ever pulled out by the music. It was so immersive and I really appreciate that. So Chobits follows Hideki as he moves to the big city and deals with going to prep school and attempts to get into college. And he experiences this new amazing thing called a persicom. And a persicom is a personal computer, but it's shaped like a human, which I thought that was kind of goofy now. But when it came out, that was the coolest thing I had ever heard of.
There's a lot about just that time period, not just of anime, but like, there's a lot about that time period of technology that is a very interesting throwback. Like, just sometimes Hideki's, like, bewilderment with technology bordered on unrealistic, but some of it did make sense when you think, like, no, computer technology was very new at the time, so it does kind of make sense that he wouldn't know a lot of things. But also just little touches of, like, the concept of internet porn being such a novel experience, I thought was actually really charming in a really weird way.
I honestly, that I could take that as charming as well. As someone who also grew up on a bit of a farm and then went to like a bigger city for college and all of that fun stuff, I can see and identify with him in that a little bit. This big, crazy new world with all these opportunities, and porn is the most exciting thing.
Now, something to make note of is that very distinctly, Chi and the other Persicoms are not robots. They're computers.
That's right.
Which I thought was, I will fully admit, I still don't totally understand. Like, I kind of get it, but it is a very big deal from just like a creative standpoint in the series that these are not robots. I actually found an interview done with Clamp back when they had, like, I think they had just finished making Chobits, the manga. And in the interviewer asked, why did you make Chi a computer and not a robot? And a response was given by one of the members of Clamp, Okawa, who said, the Japanese have a tendency to accept robots as being personified, which makes it easy to emphasize with them, doesn't it? But computers have a stronger association of being just an electronic appliance. We decided to use computers to stress the fact that they weren't living beings. I think that's really cool. In practice, this might just be that, like, you know, I'm a Westerner, we have different concepts and philosophies of things. I will totally accept that. In practice, to me, it doesn't really feel like a huge difference, but I certainly appreciate the creative vision behind the choice.
I'll contrast that by saying that I love that she's not a robot. I love that they are computers. Because at the time of this coming out, at the time it was written, there was this whole new frontier of what computers could be. There's a secondary storyline in there about a man marrying his computer. And I couldn't tell you when it was, but, you know, at the time there were news articles about people, about men mostly, that would marry like their anime waifu, or would attempt to marry like their computer wife. And that's a kind of a crazy concept now, but at the time that was a possibility. That was something that could happen. And I think that wonderment, is that a word? Is there that sense of wonder? Is there?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely what you get with that, with the wonderment.
Yeah. But I really like that she's not a robot, because then it's just every other sci-fi piece of media anyway.
That makes sense. I think my thing is, again, I fully concede that this is probably just me having too basic a view of things. I think mine is just like, what is the dividing line? Like, at what point does a computer shaped like a human not just become a robot, or vice versa? But I think that's just me taking things a little too literally.
That's just because you like robots.
Okay, Transformers are entirely different things.
Are they? Are you gonna fall in love with a Transformer?
This is not the discussion to have right now.
Excellent. So to wrap up our synopsis here, Hideki finds a Persicom, and through some very ridiculous happenstance, ends up teaching her and helping her become more human in a way. And eventually they fall in love. And I don't know if we're putting a bunch of spoilers here or not, but
I think that one's kind of just expected given the genre.
that's fair.
Let's be honest. Also, on the topic of Persicoms being just like, this is a personal computer, there's a scene in the first episode where Hideki is looking at a bunch of Persicom models through like a shop window and they have price tags on them. Out of curiosity, I checked a Persicom, at least the models that he was looking at, because they do show that there's different versions, but they cost roughly $3,500.
That's so much less than I was expecting.
Keep in mind, this is also like 2000s money.
I mean, even still, like, that's a whole person computer.
That's a whole person com. So now that you've gotten to re-experience this thing that you were like very attached to when you were younger, like what are your general thoughts after having watched it again and having like a new eye on the whole thing?
Oh god. The biggest standout thing is this show is so insanely horny. And I guess I'm just gonna chalk it up to being a horny teenager myself when I first watched this. I was not prepared for the level of anime horny that this show actually was. Which is not to say that that's a bad thing. It's just something that I felt underprepared for.
So I'm gonna come in as the fresh-faced viewer and say it was a bad thing. God, some episodes were so fucking hard to get through with just how horny they were. 'Cause, like, again, the conceit of the show is you have this guy, he finds a personal computer robot, like, humanoid machine, and takes her in and starts to care for her and, like, teaches her of the world. 'Cause a very big part of the plot is the fact that she has no memories. Most Persicoms, like, you buy them and they've already come with, like, baseline information. When she first gets turned on after Hideki finds her, literally can only say chi. She's named by Hideki after the only sound she is capable of making. And over time, he kind of just teaches her as if you would teach, like, a toddler. Which is the thing that makes the whole conceit of the show very uncomfortable for me in a lot of parts, because what we're supposed to have is like a cute romance story, but what it comes off as is like, hey, please stop being horny about this childlike robot girl. It's uncomfortable.
It's very predatory.
Yeah, like this is definitely one of those things of like, this is unfortunately just not aged very well. This obviously was not the intent back in the day. But you have this guy who is, like, very much a horny 18-year-old boy, and here he has dropped in his lap, essentially, a incredibly childlike, naive girl who will, like, strip naked as if it's nothing in front of him, and immediately falls in love with him, and it's just like, ugh. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot about the show that does work. There's a lot about the show that is incredibly heartwarming. But there's also just as much stuff that's, like, it gets kind of uncomfortable with how much Hideki sexualizes chi, and therefore the show sexualizes chi. It just makes it a hard watch sometimes.
It absolutely does. I don't feel there's 2 points I want to touch on there. The first one being that I don't want to say it's justified by any means, because it's excessive.
Mm-hmm.
But it does play into the overarching theme of what I'm going to say is the second half, in that Chi is super innocent for a reason. Chi is supposed to learn things for a reason, that we find out a little bit later. So I'm not saying by any means is this justified, but it does tie back into that theme of her or how she's supposed to be this innocent thing, and how she's not supposed to, she's not supposed to be horny with anybody other than the one for me.
Oh, that's another thing that I'll have a lot to talk about later.
Yeah.
What was your...
I didn't know if we want to unpack that just yet.
We'll get to that.
There's a lot of icks there.
Yeah.
So I feel like a lot of anime that came out at this time or was made at this time uses inappropriate horniness, not only to grab the audience like they do, but also as a way to fight back against societal norms. At least in Japan, and from my limited understanding of Japan, it tends to be a little bit more conservative. So by having these overtly sexual things, it kind of is subversive in that way.
Which, to be clear, is not us, like, defending that sort of thing, more so just, like...
No, definitely not.
Just trying to give a concept of why it would be a thing in the first place.
Right, because if Chobits was airing today, I don't think it would be as successful.
Definitely not.
Yeah. I feel like there's a certain level of anime bullshit threshold that we can hit, and I think it exceeds that for what modern audiences want today.
Absolutely. Like, I can simultaneously see why this was so popular at the time and acknowledge that it would not do as well today whatsoever. At least not without some major, like, tonal changes and rewrites and pacing, because that's the other thing. Like, anime back in the day, much longer. Like, the typical length of an anime season today is like 12 episodes. Back then, it was like 24 to 32, and with that came a difference in pacing. And dear God, there is so much, like, actual very good writing and story and characters in Chobits that is often pushed to the background with pointless, frustrating fluff that just makes it really hard to get through. Like, I liked the first chunk of episodes, and I was really, really entranced by the last, like, chunk of episodes, but that middle 80% is such a slog to get through. And I can guarantee that if I wasn't being forced to watch it for the podcast, like if I was just watching it fresh-faced out of curiosity, I probably would have dropped around, like, episode 5.
I have to agree with you. That middle is a total slog. And the end, I felt like there could have been so much more done with that line of storytelling because it's so interesting. And I feel like given the space to breathe, it could have been even more impactful.
Now, I will say I did find in my research that apparently the anime is very different from the manga, and the anime actually adds a lot of that, like, fillery fluff that I was talking about. Most fans of the franchise tend to agree that the manga is better. I'm tempted to check it out, at least just, like, grab the first volume out of curiosity. I'm not sure if I will, but that might be, like, come episode 2, I might have a little addendum to put on our Chobits coverage.
I would love any excuse to go back and read the manga simply because of how gorgeous it is. I did read, I believe, the entire series. However, I think I was in the 8th grade at the time, and I'm old, so I simply do not remember.
Completely understandable.
Absolutely. I do remember being entranced. Like, it's just gorgeous, and the story, I believe, is there. It's unfortunate that the way anime was meant to be consumed, i.e. like once a week for 20 minutes a week, the episodic nature of it, I feel really kind of kills the story a bit because they inject so much fluff into it.
They really do. And the problem is that, like, I think only like 50% of the time is it actually worthwhile. Like, normally I am a huge advocate for, like, I love slice of life anime as a genre, but I'm also a very big advocate for just, like, slice of life segments in properties that aren't always that. Like, some of my favorite episodes of Dragon Ball are the ones where there's no fighting at all, and they're just sitting around, and you get to have, like, fun character interactions that you might not normally see. But in Chobits, a good, like, 80% of the anime is that sort of content, but I think at best 20% is actually entertaining.
I am inclined to agree. I don't know what I just said.
Agree.
I'm inclined to agree because, the first time we learned that, oh, Chi doesn't know how to do blank, it's entertaining. And I feel, we're learning about these characters, we're learning how they approach their problems, how they solve those problems, but then they just kind of repeat that over and over and over. Like, Hideki has to teach Chi how to take a bath, and so there's like 10 whole minutes of him losing it because he can't handle teaching a pretty girl, Persicom, how to wash herself because she's going to be naked, and he can't do that.
Yeah.
And it's so much that is completely unnecessary because we already understand, he finds her attractive, and it's going to be difficult because he can't keep his horniness in check, which...
It's kind of the same.
That's the 80%. Yeah.
It's kind of the same joke over and over. Yeah.
Definitely.
And this brings up a very big point for me, which is that of all of the problems this show has, unfortunately, the biggest one is our main character, Hideki. Hideki is the fucking worst. He's not a bad person. Like, they actually go out of the way to show that he is a good guy at heart. In fact, they specifically say the phrase good guy so many times to the point that it becomes maybe a little questionable. But he is he's fully a good person, but he's this horrible combination of annoying and boring. Because he as a character is decidedly the least interesting of any of the characters in the show. More so than the fucking blank slate robot girl. And then a big running gag of the show is him having these huge over-the-top reactions to things, which I do think would have worked in a different show. But the whole rest of Chobits, even though it is a comedy a lot of the time, it just feels like it's a different style of comedy than the character that Hideki is. I don't feel like he fits in the show that we're given, if that makes sense.
No, I absolutely agree. I would have liked to see him mature more over the course of all the episodes, because it feels like right when the last chunk of episodes is going on, that he has a complete tone shift, and, he's super protective, and he cares so much about Chi, but, it's so sudden. There's no... it's a night and day character growth, and I would have liked to have seen that implemented a little bit slower, which probably would have gotten rid of a lot of the excess that we got bored with.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite as night and day of a change, but I can certainly agree. The character who I do weirdly really enjoy the pacing of is our second protagonist, Chi. There was a number of times where I noted myself as I was watching, the pacing of her learning things, I felt was actually handled very well. It was very believable how much she would learn and how much of a person she became over time. I never felt like there was any huge jumps of she's only capable of saying 3 words to her saying full sentences, or alternatively, there's no incredibly long stretches of her just kind of stagnating in development. So that is a very big plus I will give on the show's point. I think they did a very good job of making you feel like Chi is learning and growing naturally.
Yes, absolutely. It was really nice to see Chi grow as a person. And I thought it was really appropriate and really cute whenever she would revert back to some of the ways she would say things specifically to Hideki.
Yes, that's the unfortunate thing, is that for all the problems, some of the bits of their relationship are actually very, very cute. Mainly just the way Chi acts around Hideki. It is... I wouldn't say you have to ignore the more problematic aspects of the relationship dynamic to enjoy them, but even knowing that, hey, this is maybe not the most healthy or positive relationship, just the way that she acts around him, and she gets happy when he's happy and whatnot, it is legitimately adorable.
It's so, so cute. And I really appreciate there's several times in which Hideki tries to acknowledge Chi as a person. Like when he, for example, she goes out and gets a job and he's like, "No, that's your money." And
Yes, that was so cute.
it's so sweet. And that I feel like that's a really great character development for the both of them. That was one aspect that I really enjoyed seeing. And even more so when she starts reading the cute little bunny books, she starts making decisions for herself. And I really like seeing any girl make decisions for herself, but especially a girl that was robbed of agency at the beginning.
Especially any girl in an anime.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it, but yeah.
To kind of put a cap on our discussion of our two leads, I think it's very fair to say, unsurprisingly, Clamp is much better at writing women than they are men.
Definitely. That is their strong suit.
At least when the men have to be the main characters. Like, without being too mean, because I really don't want this to be mean, I think it's understandable to see why this is one of their only real jumps into something that is not female targeted.
I can agree with that because the rest of their titles are aimed at women, and so they're much more successful because they write women really well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see if and how that will change as I consume more Clamp anime versus Clamp manga that I've read.
Ooh, that is an interesting thought. Yeah, which we certainly will be doing. We have plenty of, considering the time period that we're focusing on, inevitably we're going to be watching a lot of Clamp stuff.
Definitely, and I'm very excited about it. I'm excited to revisit Clamp specifically, mostly because they're a huge influence on my own art. The self-reflection that happened as we were watching Chobits is kind of insane. It kind of slapped me in the face.
Did you have some kind of emotional crisis?
A little bit. I can see a lot of where my creative decisions are based from or come from. A lot of the like flowing Lolita dresses and the hair. Oh my god, I draw the same hair. Or at least I try to. You know, I'm not going to say that I'm as good as Clamp or anything, but like those early creative decisions came from Clamp. And it's really cool to go back and watch, but it's also really emotional to have that just thrown directly into your face.
Speaking of the Lolita dresses, I think it'd be good to take a second and we go to not just like, the point of this isn't just to do a recap of the show. We also want to talk about the cultural impact that the series had, and inarguably one of the biggest impacts this series had was on the cosplay community at the time, and even today, because there are so many incredibly iconic Chi outfits that cosplay conventions back in the day were just flooded with.
Absolutely. Chi is and has been and probably will continue to be a lot of people's cosplay grails, like their holy grail, the one big cosplay that they want to do. I have heard from so many cosplayers and a lot of close friends that Chi is the big goal. They're the one that they want to do, and they want to do it the best. And I love that for them because her outfits are absolutely iconic. They were my gateway into fashion as a whole, specifically Lolita fashion, but just J fashion in general.
Oh, for sure. I would argue that, like, if you wanted to say that there was a single outfit that is the Chi outfit, like the one that people envision the most, I think it would probably be the sort of like burgundy red, like very traditional dress that she has. Would you agree with that, or do you think there's a different outfit that is more like, this is the Chi?
Well, to me, the Chi outfit is the pink Lolita dress. But I would say that simply because of the art book that came out, that shows both Chi and Freya in a lot of the shots.
That does make sense, yeah.
Because if I'm thinking about Chi, I'm not necessarily thinking about her everyday outfit. I'm thinking about, like, the big, beautiful outfit. And me specifically, I actually think about a blue one that's in the art book of her on the lamppost.
Going back to that story you said earlier about you saw a bunch of Chi cosplayers at the convention. I have to ask if any of them were wearing what is my absolute favorite Chi outfit, which was the oversized white t-shirt and khaki pants combo from the second episode.
No, unfortunately, these cosplayers were headed to a tea party, which had a strict dress code, so...
No khakis at the tea party.
They were in full Lolita gear. However, now I'm thinking about cosplaying that because that sounds fun.
That was one of the more upsetting aspects of the show to me, was that they started out giving Chi the best possible outfit and then took her out of it almost immediately. There was an episode, like, way later in the show, like near the end, where they put her in that t-shirt and baggy pants combo again, and I was so fucking hyped. I was like, yes! Finally!
I love it. No, and I mean, I have a t-shirt that has Chi just wearing an oversized t-shirt. It's one of my most favorite possessions.
Aww.
So really, Chi looks best in anything that she's in currently.
Oh yeah, like the whole fashion of the show it's iconic for a reason. I just, in particular, was a very big fan of the t-shirt baggy pants outfit, and I was sad that it was put to the side so heavily.
That's fair.
Moving on, there's a lot to talk about with the side characters of the show, arguably more than the main characters, which we can debate on whether or not that's a good thing. But let's see, there's the neighbor friend, Shinbo, who also goes to the same prep school that Hideki goes to. He has his own, like, little miniature travel Persicom called Sumomo, which is this just horrible little gremlin of a thing who's like 3 inches tall and rides around on his shoulder. I flip-flopped back and forth quite a bit between loving and hating that little creature.
Yes, the flip-flop was real with Sumomo, because sometimes she's just the cutest little thing, and sometimes I want to throw her out a window because she's so annoying.
You also had, let's see, there was Shinbo, there was the manager of the apartment complex that he lived in.
Miss Hebia.
Miss Hebia. I was gonna get to Miss Hebia. Wait, no, was she Miss Hebia or was that the teacher?
Yeah, Miss Hebia is the Miss Manager.
Miss Manager, that's right. I don't remember all their names. I have a lot of nicknames for some of them, I will fully admit. There's Miss Hebia, there's the teacher of the prep school that I go to, who becomes much more important than I expected she would be.
Agreed. That was one of the episodes I didn't really remember at all. So to see that was really fun.
Checking my notes, actually, her name is Miss Shimizu, and that is the wonderful Wendy Lee, who many will know as Faye Valentine from Cowboy Bebop.
I wondered why I recognized her.
Right?
That's wonderful.
Great performance. Again, wonderful performance from the dubcast.
Absolutely.
You have... Oh?
I just wanted to say that I love how she handles her classroom. She mentions that she wanted to be like a young teacher, like preschool, pre-K, elementary, something like that. And so she treats the students that way, and it's really endearing. I really like her. Oh,
I loved her too. I was really happy in the later episodes where she got more of a focus. Let's see, other characters. You have Yumi, who is a co-worker of Hideki's after he gets a job. I initially, I remember writing down in my episode notes as I was walking through, I was like, wow, it is impressive what a nothing character Yumi is. Almost immediately after I typed that out, complete 180. But I did think that was very amusing, how she starts out basically nothing, and then she becomes, one of the more interesting characters of the show.
Definitely. It was really cool to see. And I don't feel like she had a lot of character development, per se, until the very, very end. Mm-hmm. But to see her story unfold was very, very cool.
I liked it a lot. He comes in a little later compared to the other side characters, but another big character that we need to talk about is, I'll admit, I forget his name. I just have him written down as Bakery Man. The owner of the bakery that she eventually gets a job at, and you find out later has some fun drama backstory with Yumi.
I was not expecting that at all whatsoever, but I was delighted when it happened.
Bakery Man, fucking Steve Blum, Spike Spiegel.
Oh, I knew it. I could listen to him talk forever.
He's so fucking hot.
He really is.
Listen, you asked earlier if I would ever date a Transformer. I'm not a robosexual, but he does play a version of Starscream in Transformers Prime, and oh, baby.
Oh no.
Oof. I'll have to send you a clip of Steve Blum's Starscream at some point after the podcast.
Please do. You've caught my interest now. That's dangerous.
There was a lot of moments in the show, because again, talking about like stacked voice cast, there was a lot of character introductions where I was like, ooh, they sound familiar. I should look up who that is. But two, where I was just like, like that gif of pointing at the screen, like, oh, was unsurprisingly Steve Blum as the bakery man. And then you have the other main side character we haven't brought up yet, Kokubunji, the rich child prodigy with a weird sister thing. Mona Marshall, Izzy from Digimon, immediately clocked that shit.
Oh, I'm glad you did, because I recognized him, but I did not look it up for fear of placing him as another character.
Oh. No, immediately.
That's why I don't know any of the voice actors, is I don't want to know who they are, so I can't clock them and take away from the performance of this character. But knowing that is very nice.
See, I'm one of those people that kind of thing just eats away at my brain. If I just barely recognize someone, I have to pause everything I'm doing and pull up IMDb. But yeah, like, again, it's kind of a double-edged sword in that so many of the side characters have these surprisingly interesting and well-written stories about them, and have really interesting backstories and the drama going on in their lives that you could see unfold. But often kind of overshadows the main characters.
I would agree, simply because of the pacing.
Yeah, like, the main characters, like Chi and Hideki and everything going on to them, especially Chi and finding out about her backstory, it is very cool and interesting. It just doesn't happen for most of the show, and so we focus on the side character stuff instead.
Right. No, and that was a surprising depth that I wasn't really prepared for, and none of the people I was watching it with were prepared for either. It was very interesting to see their takes on that, but mostly because it feels like they don't really happen organically, and that they do get overshadowed.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a lot of what Kokubunji brings up casually kind of turns into major plot points later when we meet another character, Kojima, or Dragonfly.
Oh, yes. Which, by the way,
yeah.
Slight tangent, was Dragonfly the other player they met in the video game? That wasn't clear to me.
Oh. I might have to run it back, but I think you're right.
I think it has to be, because
sense.
otherwise that character they met in the video game had no bearing on anything, but they super made it seem like they were going to be important.
Well, I definitely want to go back and look, because him being in the video game totally tracks for the weird stalking, abduction stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, like, one of the highlights of Chobits as a story is the exploration of just the idea of, like, here is a world that is much like our own, except everyone has these personal computers who are essentially robot servants that walk around everywhere. And I remember in the early episodes, I was a little disappointed with how heavy into the comedic things went, and I was like, oh, they're like, this is fun. I was worried that they weren't going to do enough with the idea, but as the show goes on, they do actually explore this concept in a realistic detail that I was super happy about, and they mainly do it through these side characters and their experiences with Persicoms.
That, I feel, is one of the big strengths of the show. I loved watching Miss Shimizu talk about her estranged husband.
Oh my god, yes.
It was so meaningful that I had to pause after that episode. That we had to call a break after that one so we could sit down and talk about the impact of that specific relationship, even before we got to all of the other ones. Because I brought up that in this specific relationship, you can replace the husband's love of Persicoms with any issue that could divide a marriage. cheating addiction, like literally fill in the blank with anything.
Oh,
And
yeah.
those emotions are so incredibly real. And that depth was just, that magnitude of that feeling was a little overwhelming at the end of that episode, which brought you really close to Miss Shimizu, and really set up her relationship change with Shimpo there.
Yeah, that's something I could see modern audiences very understandably taking issue with. Is you have this teacher who, like, falls in love with and starts dating one of her students. Now, they are all, like, of age. It's like a college prep school, so you don't have to worry about that. Still, objectively not a great relationship dynamic, but something I think that, like, as an even... something that I really like as just, like, a cap on her whole thing of she's gone through this horrible trauma where her husband has basically just replaced her with a computer, which, like you said, you could swap that out for any sort of relationship drama. Like, you have her in this, like, horrible, emotionally scarring time in her life, falling into the arms of a student of hers who does legitimately, like, care for her and love her and wants to be there for her. And it's like, I really appreciated how at no point did the show try and say definitively, like, this is good or this is bad, if that makes sense.
They definitely focused on the relationship as an insular thing rather than what it could look like from the outside.
Yeah. Like, they do take the time to point out, like, hey, dude, what the fuck are you doing? That's your teacher. But it's...
right.
It's not as much of a focus of the dynamic, or it's not as much of a focus of the story as you might expect. It's more so just like, this is a thing that can happen, whether it's good or bad. It sure is
a thing that happens.
Yeah, pretty much. Which there's a lot of discussions that we have these days about, like, the decline of media literacy and blah, 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 blah. But I always really appreciate when a story doesn't try and tell you how you're supposed to feel about something. It just presents you with a scenario which you can very easily... Like, someone could come to me and be like, the relationship between Miss Shimizu and Shinbo is bad and predatory and there's issues with it, and I probably could not disagree with them. I think they could be completely valid in their interpretation of the situation because the show lets them be interpretive.
I adore shows that do this because they don't beat you over the head with if things are right or wrong or what set of morals it follows, and being able to make our own decisions on what we feel is right or wrong is, in my opinion, of the utmost importance when it comes to media. So I really appreciate that from a storytelling perspective anyway.
Absolutely. I do find it very funny how, like, this is kind of the setup of the show to begin with, but I find it very amusing how you have our main character, Hideki, who internally is just gonna, like, man, I really want to bang this Persicom, and then literally every other person in his life is like, I have Persicom-related trauma.
Oh god, when you say it like that, but you're absolutely right.
Right? Because the other major... Like, there's kind of three big side character plot lines. Really two, and then you have Kokobunji and his weird thing with his sister robot, which we can get into later. But the other major, like, side character plot line is the thing between Yumi, the bakery man, and his ex-wife, who you find out was a Persicom.
So let's talk about Bakery Man and his crazy relationship drama with Yumi and other Yumi.
Oh god, I actually did forget they had the same name. Oof.
Oh, that reveal was significant. But Bakery Man, Ueda, he goes into a Persicom shop and he wants to buy one, and he decides on this older model because she's perfect. He loves her. She's gorgeous to him. And so he brings her home and they have, well, I guess he doesn't bring her home. He takes her to the bakery where he works. And they sort of fall in love. Not sort of. So Ueda falls in love with his Persicom, and he struggles with it. Like it's a very human struggle that we get to see. And the voice acting here is amazing. I could listen to this guy talk about his Persicom relationship the whole time.
To be fair, it is Steve Blum.
Yeah, I was enamored the whole time. Like, thank you, Steve Blum, for bringing this beautiful bakery man and his trauma to light. And so he struggles with, she's not a real person, she's a Persicom. And, what are people gonna think when I say that I'm in love with my computer? And he eventually decides that, well, he's gonna marry her anyway. And so he marries his Persicom, and it's all over, like, TV and the news and stuff. And so they have a really happy marriage. He's totally content and pleased. And then unfortunately she develops a memory hardware issue, and starts to forget what she's doing.
Yeah, because because she's an older model, there's not really support for her.
Right.
I almost said innards, which isn't wrong, but also doesn't sound right.
I don't love that.
No. But basically, like, if Bakery Man wants to fix her personality is going to be wiped in the process.
Right. And so he really can't. And so he kind of lets her condition get worse and worse, until she basically resets. She resets all the time and asks him for his name and basically asks him to log in again. 3
guesses what sort of allegory this relationship is for.
Yeah,
it's a hard watch.
A little real.
It's a really hard watch.
And then it only gets worse. So they're out, and she's, dealing with this memory crisis, this hardware crisis that she can't do anything about, that he can't do anything about. And he's so worried about her that as they go to cross the street, he doesn't see a big truck coming, and she valiantly saves his life and pushes him out of the way, and in turn is completely destroyed and unsavable.
The scene where he is like holding her in his arms after she's been hit by the truck, and the audio distortion on her voice destroyed me.
I just got chills all over again just from you describing that.
Oh, God.
I cried.
Her final act was keeping her man from being isekai'd.
The most hero act she could have performed.
Turns out she'll actually be the main character in season 19 of Sword Art Online.
I would appreciate the crossover, honestly. I'm gonna go write some fan fiction.
Please do.
I'll report back. But no, like that's and we keep coming back to this. It's a depth that I was so underprepared for.
And the great thing about it is that, like, we've complained about how Hideki doesn't really have a lot going on, which is unfortunate for the main character. But I wouldn't say a saving grace, but a really nice thing that they do is that they have these side characters that have these very interesting plot lines and backstories, and then by the end, they actually tie into Hideki's whole thing with Chi, because in the final episodes, you see him, like, he's trying to decide, hey, do I actually want to be in a relationship with Chi? Do I want to be in a relationship with a computer? And he's using the experiences of his friends and the people that we've seen, like, have their own Persicom experiences, and he's using that as a way to make his choice, which, again, it is unfortunate that Hideki has so little going on himself, but by the end, I think it all kind of, like, ties in a really impressive way, honestly, from a narrative standpoint.
It definitely pulls all these loose threads together in a satisfying way. I like that Hideki can use experiences that didn't happen to him to inform his decisions in the last act with Chi.
Yeah, and okay, real quick, we'll also talk about Kokubunji and Yuzuki is her name. That's kind of the third, like, big side character duo that we have. We have Kokubunji, who is this, like, 12-year-old child prodigy tech whiz who lives in a giant mansion with his harem of Persicom girls who are all in skimpy lingerie maid wear. Lots of questions there, but we'll ignore that.
We're just gonna let that slide.
And his and his like main Persicom Yuzuki, who you find out down the line is supposedly modeled after his sister. I guess they mean in personality only, because later on you get to see a photo of his real sister, and wow, it is impressive how little alike they look.
I was relieved, genuinely, to find out that Yuzuki doesn't actually look like his sister at all.
It definitely makes things less creepy. Not creepy. There's still a lot of the dynamic between this boy and his dead sister robot that raises some unpleasant eyebrows.
Unpleasant is putting it mildly, but I'm gonna agree.
Yeah, thankfully they don't delve too deep into that as much as they do the other, like, big side character plots. I will say, Kokubunji as a character and Yuzuki as a character, I like them a lot. Their backstory stuff, unlike the others, like, it did not grip me in the slightest. I honestly did not care about their whole thing.
No, and that's not the part of Kokubunji that I was the most interested in either. It was kind of nice for him to have some character and have his Persicom-related trauma. But I felt like Kokubunji, his function as a character was to introduce Hideki to the big scary internet. And I feel like it dropped the ball a couple of times. And that could just be me speaking from a modern perspective, because I've seen where the internet went after this, or after it was written anyway. One specific instance I'll give is the haunted house episode, which was kind of goofy.
God, that was one of the stupidest fucking episodes. Like, I distinctly remember my very first note that I had on that episode was, why is this robot reading everyone creepypasta?
Yes, but I felt like we could have maybe had a little bit of a primer on what a creepypasta was, or maybe delved a little bit more into these message boards, or maybe even had a visual representation of any of that. And I feel like it would have brought Kokubunji a little bit more relevance, where instead he was just treated as an encyclopedia for the internet.
I didn't see him like that exactly. I think he was... I at least thought he was a little more... I don't want to say useful than that, but I did enjoy him as a character quite a bit, and I liked when he showed up. I am now just realizing, and now that you've said it, like, for as much focus in the plot that, like, forums and message boards have, we never see an on-screen representation of one at all.
We don't.
Like, the only time we ever see a computer screen is when it's a creepy image of Chi or, quote-unquote, a map.
Yeah, that's all we got out of that. And I feel like I understand why we probably don't have that visual representation, because it's going to be dated no matter what they do. I just feel like maybe we could have... Well, no, I don't want them to talk about it more, because that's kind of boring.
Right, like, my thought on that is, like, it certainly would have been more fun for them to delve more into that, especially from, like, a modern perspective, where it could be, like, a time capsule of that sort of, like, old internet culture. But also, that very clearly was not the intent with the story. I don't think it's a negative on the anime's point that they didn't. It's more so just us. We personally would have liked there to be more.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a personal preference. And I like Minoru. I think he's an interesting little dude. I like the part that he plays in all of this.
Minoru? You mean Kokubunji?
Kokubunji. I used his first name. I probably shouldn't do that, I guess.
Oh.
I don't know these characters on a personal level. I won't use their first name. Kokubunji is an interesting character, and I appreciate him a lot for his function in the story. But also, he's a cool little dude.
Yeah, also the casting of Mona Marshall as Kokubunji, again, Izzy from Digimon, like, that is... I don't know if maybe I should feel bad for Mona that she's being typecast so much, like... Gotta be the young boy computer whiz, but it was very good casting for sure.
I mean, how many young boy computer whizzes are there really in early aughts anime?
I don't know. Let's look up Mona Marshall's IMDb and find out.
Oh my god! I was gonna say let's watch a bunch of anime and find out, but that's so much worse and far more accurate, I'm sure.
But yeah, so like you have the teacher and Shinbo plot. You have the, well, not plot, just like story, I guess. You have the teacher and Shinbo thing. You have the bakery man and Yumi thing. And then you have the Kokobunji and sister maid wife robot thing. The Kokobunji one doesn't really, along with being the least interesting of the three side character chunks, I also don't think it really plays much into Hideki's choice at the end as the other two do, because the other two, it's like it's really just like opposing, and again, this is brilliant from a narrative standpoint, honestly. It's really just opposing views on the thing, because you have, on one end, you have the story where someone's life was horribly ruined by someone having a romantic relationship with a Persicom, and then you have the other, which, while it did end very sadly, with the bakery man and Persicom Yumi, they make a pretty good point of, like, it wasn't an unhealthy relationship. He really did love her. When the media was covering it, they weren't, like, being mean or bullying him. It was more so just like, here's an interesting story. And so they have two different stories showing, like any relationship, good or bad, could come from this. And you can't really know what it's going to be until you give it a shot.
Right, that calls back to the viewer gets to decide how you feel about this relationship, just like Hideki gets to decide how he feels about it. I love that the writers have given permission to their characters to feel this way, to do the things that they're going to do. It really feels like they were given a choice.
It really does, and it's a very nice experience when we actually get to experience, because again, there's a lot of nothing in this show, unfortunately.
You're absolutely right.
Okay, so now that we've covered the side characters extensively, we should actually go back and talk about our main characters, because while nothing happens for a long time, there is still plenty that goes on. It's just sort of sandwiched around 18 episodes of filler. Which, like, little sprinklings every, like, 3 or 4 episodes to be like, hey, remember, there's a plot in the background.
I hold on to those sprinklings.
But yeah, so the big central mystery of the show is, like, what is Chi? Who is Chi? Where did she come from? And what's going on with her? Because you do get hints every now and then throughout the story that, like, there is something going on with Chi. It is very suspicious, just her in general. Early on in the show, you get the title drop, Chobits. We learn thanks to Kokobunji, little nerd boy, that Chi is most likely, they're not sure, but that she's something called a Chobits, which in the most simple terms is, like, basically an actual AI, I think is fair to say. Like, she has the potential to have, quote unquote, real emotions and thoughts and not just be programmed.
Yeah, it's a completely different level of supercomputer compared to a regular Persicom. And when you learn this, I had, well, maybe not you, but I had a distinct fear that this was going to be a Pinocchio story. And fortunately, it's not.
I don't think I had a fear of it being Pinocchio, but I definitely could have seen it going that way. But it wasn't something that was, like, creeping in the back of my brain, like, oh god, what if Pinocchio?
When we have the introduction of the last two Persicoms that we meet, that fear came back.
Oh, really?
And that's just because I don't really like Pinocchio.
I don't know why that caught me off guard.
Sorry.
Pinocchio is just, I think to me, Pinocchio is just something that, like, exists in ambivalence to me. I've never really heard of anyone being like, Pinocchio, ugh.
Maybe it's just the Disney one that I'm not too keen on, but I didn't want that for Chi because she's such a unique character. To have her just suddenly be human would have felt really cheap.
I can understand that. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. With the introduction of what a Chobits is, that was a distinct fear that I had. But fortunately, they're just really super crazy, awesome computers that can probably feel. But we don't know because they're mysterious and we've never seen one before.
Right. Like, we find out that Chobit, it's basically just like the idea of a Chobits is just like a dark web rumor, essentially.
I feel like there could have been a better tie-in with that, but that's just me wishing for more web nostalgia, I think. Same with the creepypasta thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But yeah, so we learn over the course of the show, maybe a little slower than I would like. We get little bits and pieces of, like, you find out a little bit more about Chi and what might be going on. And when it shows up, it is actually a very interesting mystery, especially in the last, like, handful of episodes where they really start focusing on the Chi mystery. There's some cool shit there. Unfortunately, I am about to take us into the worst episode of the entire show. Episode 7, Chi Works.
Oh no.
This is arguably the first episode to, like, really bring out the drama guns and really emphasize, like, oh, there's some shit going on with Chi. And unfortunately, it's the worst. Not the Chi stuff, but everything that leads to us learning interesting Chi stuff is the worst. Because this is the episode with the porn man and his porn room.
Yeah.
This is the episode that just really takes all of the worst parts of the show and squishes them into a little dirty, disgusting ball and throws it in your face. Because as we said much earlier in the recording, one of the big problems with the show is how much the childlike robot girl gets sexualized. And in this episode, you have Chi, she's like wandering around trying to find a job, and she gets, we'll say, scouted, quote unquote, by who I refer to as the porn man, who's like, hey, sweetie, I know how you can make a lot of money real easy. You're so cute. And immediately I was like, oh no, I know where this is going, and I hated it.
No, that red flag just took over the whole screen immediately.
Yeah, so he takes her to a peep show room, which is like a fucking saw trap, because he just sits her in an empty room in a metal chair, and he has like the CRT monitor up in the corner, and I was like, what the fuck is about to happen? And she's surrounded by, which for a moment, I was terrified were going to be glory holes, but they're actually just like peepholes that people can watch in, and the idea is that she's just going to strip for the perverts that are watching. And it is as creepy as you would think. It's super upsetting, super uncomfortable, but the show treats it as a comedy the entire way through, which is the worst part.
It really is, because you can tell that they're trying to take some of the tension away, and it does not work. There is at no point do you feel less concerned or less disgusted because Chi's just being Chi, despite this horrific situation she's been put in.
See, I didn't even give them the benefit of the doubt that, like, oh, they're trying to relieve tension. To me, it fully felt like, ooh, look at how funny it is that she's wandered into this silly situation. Uh-oh. And it's so gross. And it's so uncomfortable. I hated every fucking second of it. I will be 100% honest. That episode, like, until the last couple of minutes where we have, like, the neat dramatic reveal where Chi eventually basically goes Super Saiyan, I was seriously considering calling off this recording. Like, maybe not canceling the episode entirely, but just being like, you know what? You watch the rest. You can just tell me about the rest. I hate this. I hate this so much. Because I hated it. I hated it so much. And it somehow got worse when Chi does a bad job of being a stripper, and so the porn man walks into the porn room and starts, like, showing her, like, here, just take this off and take it here, let me do it for you, and, like, physically grabs her legs and spreads them open and goes to basically finger her in front of the audience, which, again, the show treats as a comedy, treats like it's funny and silly. And I get that, like, hey, this isn't a quote-unquote real girl. It's a robot. It's a computer. It's not that bad. But you can't have that and simultaneously be telling us, the audience, to emphasize with her as if she is a real person, a real human being, because that is obviously the point, especially as we get to the end. And so instead, what you have is this man molesting a young girl, and we're thinking it's silly.
Honestly, even just hearing you recap it, it's hard to even form words because of how absolutely disgusting that one is, and it's so uncomfortable, and the payoff of her being a Super Saiyan at the end is not at all worth the trauma that we had to go through of watching her do that and still be told that it's something funny to see.
And the worst part is that it's like, it's an integral episode, like that shit that happens with Chi at the end. Because another, like, anime thing about the show is that Chi's power button is where her vagina would be. And I think actively, like, in a fake vagina, the way they seem to describe it sometimes. And so, like, Porn Man goes to molest her and presses the power button, and, like, a security program activates. She goes computer Super Saiyan and all that, and there's a lot of drama at the end of the episode. And it's not skippable stuff. Like, that is integral things to the rest of the plot. It's referenced multiple times later on in the show, so you can't even say, like, oh, skip episode 7. You can't. You literally can't.
You really can't. And for something so awful to be so important to the rest of the story viewing, or the rest of the storytelling, is, I mean, I know it turned audiences off when it came out. I can't imagine how modern audiences would react to this.
Not great. I can tell you right now. Not great.
And I sort of say, even just from your reaction, like, I don't think it would be aired anywhere outside of maybe streaming stuff.
For sure. Because also this episode is the introduction of another major character, the goth Lolita lesbian twin robot incest character.
That was very succinct, unfortunately.
Because when Chi's security program activates, you get introduced to Chi's incestuous twin, who she becomes, unsurprisingly, very important down the line. So you have this horrible, super uncomfortable, horribly aged episode that is, at the same time, incredibly integral to the plot.
This is where we get a little bit of a tone shift, I guess, is what I'm going to call it, where we're told that something is definitively bad. And with this revelation comes our plot points on Chi and who we find out to be her family later.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we get to the actual, like, end of the show, or the last, like, handful, when you get through that 80% frustrating filler that occasionally has little, like, hey, remember, there's a plot happening sprinkled in. You get to the last, like, 4 or 5 episodes, I think, which were legitimately very interesting, very entertaining, gripped me, made me want to watch. You learn very interesting things about Chi and her history and why she is the way she is. You learn very cool revelations about one particular side character, which caught me super the fuck off guard. Holy shit.
Oh my god, that is the single most interesting 5 seconds of the entire show. I wrote it in my notes because I might have it tattooed on me.
It's so fucking cool.
It's so cool.
You get introduced to a new set of characters, which I am sad how little screen time they got, because I really liked them. I thought they were very interesting. The cyberpunk ninjas.
Yeah, the cyberpunk ninjas. Their design is so cool. I remember seeing them. I believe they're on a cover of one of the mangas, maybe? Or they at least got a really big splash art of them somewhere, and I was like, oh my god, I have to know who they are.
There's a lot about this show I remember as I was watching it where I felt like, man, if you didn't tell me that this was a Clamp show, I don't think I would have known. And then there's little nuggets every now and then where it's like, there's the Clamp I know, there's the unhinged weirdness that is Clamp, and the fucking cyberpunk ninjas who feel like they're right out of a different show. Like, they are definitely, like, There's the clamp I was needing in all this.
Absolutely. They seem to come out of nowhere, and really it's like the fashion. Just they're so incredibly different from everybody else, and it's really cool to see, even if they're kind of pulling Matrix vibes.
Oh, for sure. But yeah, so like you have these last few episodes which are really, really good. Alongside, I think it was like episode 19 was the episode with the bakery man's backstory. That was by far the best episode of the whole show, was the bakery man episode. But then you have like also really good stuff in the last like 4 or 5 episodes where the Chi mystery really kicks off and you start getting all the answers and the cool shit's revealed. But then the last episode, I don't know if you agree with me on this. The last episode felt very rushed to like get to the conclusion of Hideki and Chi ending up together, which I don't think is a spoiler. We knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, it is a love story. So I think we can safely say yes, they get together. But
yeah,
I absolutely agree with you. It felt incredibly rushed. I wanted to simmer here. I wanted to be in this space with Hideki and Chi and all the other characters a lot longer than what we were given.
Yeah, like it was so close to being a really good ending. I feel like it needed like one more episode, maybe, of just like or cut out more of the existing show. It just needed like one more episode's worth of time, I think.
Definitely. I feel like we probably could have lost the entire beach episode, honestly.
God, talking about fucking like iconic aspects of anime back in the day, like they had the beach episode.
I will say I had one of my favorite like super tiny segments. They go out on Kokobunji's yacht, and Hideki's going off on how, some people are so lucky, they have so much money and it's easy, and he's basically just like digging on capitalism, which yeah, of course. And then immediately he goes, "Oh, a dolphin." Just, oh my god.
That was really good. There are some really good bits in the show. Like I remember there was one, I don't remember what the setup was, but there was a great scene where for like a solid minute, what's her fucking name? Sumomo. There's a really great bit for like a solid minute. Sumomo is just chanting, "Panties, panties, panties, panties." And for some reason it super cracked me up. I loved it.
I love that. I think, we looked it up. I want to say they say underpants in that one episode like 112 times or something like that.
Oh, I definitely believe that. Just Chi going, "Underpants, underpants."
Underpants.
Also, God, okay, real quick, because I feel like we're nearing the end of things, or getting very close. I do strongly want to say, because I don't think I gave myself enough time to before, I fucking love Chi. All of the problems of the show, fuck it. Chi is amazing. She is adorable. Like, bad things happen to her. She's in a weird relationship dynamic. I wish she was in a better show. I love her so much. She's so fucking cute. I know I talked about how great her, like, development and growth is, but also just, there's so many little tidbits. Like, every scene where Chi is just, like, physically mimicking whatever Hideki is doing it's the best. It's the best scene of the whole show. Every one of those scenes is the best scene. It's adorable. I love Chi so much. All of my problems of this show, completely unrelated to the fact that Chi is the cutest fucking thing.
Chi is absolutely the cutest fucking thing. I love it when she's mirroring what Hideki's doing. It shows so much of her trying. Like, we see her try her best the whole time, and it's just so adorable, and she's perfect and wonderful in every possible way.
That whole segment of her, like, trying and failing and then getting the manager to teach her how to cook curry for Hideki when he's had a long day and, like, he's too much of a broke bitch to afford food.
So, while we were watching this entire show, but specifically that episode where she learns how to make curry, I had no idea, but earlier in the day, I had made curry for the very first time ever because
Oh my god.
my partner was sick. He was sick the whole time we were watching this, and
Oh my god. That's adorable.
it was so cute. I might cry again, but just
That is
the whole
adorable.
sentiment that she learned how to make it because she loves Hideki, and I learned how to make it because I love my partner. And we shared a moment. It was really, really sweet. And I'm totally crying again.
Oh no. So last episode feels rushed and also doesn't answer as much as I wanted it to. There's still a number of, like, I have bullet pointed 4 very specific questions that the show does not answer, even in the end, and it fucking infuriates me.
Please give us your bulletin points.
Number 1, why the fuck was Chi just out in the garbage?
I am confident that's answered in the manga.
I'm sure it is. Why didn't they also answer it in the anime? Seems kind of important.
Yeah, it could have been an extra 5 seconds with a certain character explaining that.
Yes. Question number 2. In the very first episode, when Hideki first finds Chi, he, like, picks her up out of the garbage, and they very intentionally show this, like, old computer disk falls off of her, and he leaves it behind. And they, like, make a point of, like, oh, this is important. And the whole fucking show, I was thinking to myself, like, when is he gonna find that disc? That's gotta hold, like, memories of hers or something. Like, that's gotta be important. They never go back to it.
They never
Ever,
do.
even slightly. What the fuck was on that disc?
Well, and they never show any other Persacom with a disc like that, which would have cleared up
No.
a whole lot. Like, oh yeah, Sumomo, show us your SD card, pop it out or something, you know. That kind of came out weird, but you know what I mean.
I was gonna say, for Persicoms, that seems like an innuendo.
It does.
Question number 3. Who built and sent out the cyberpunk ninjas?
Yeah, that was completely glossed over. There's nothing that tells us what's going on there.
I feel like it's super vaguely hinted at that. So, like, no spoilers, but Chi's creators, I think, huge question mark, were working for a company, stole Chi, and then that company sent out the cyberpunk ninjas to find Chi. I think they really do a bad job of telling you.
They do it's a blink and you miss it kind of situation, but I believe that is correct. But I really would have liked more information on all fronts about every single aspect of this entire relationship between cyberpunk ninjas, Chi's creators, Chi, and really everything that wraps up in the last episode.
Yeah, like, the last episode really focuses on Hideki's choice of whether or not he wants to admit that he's in love with Chi and actually wants to pursue a relationship, which, to be fair, is, like, the main thing.
Right.
Like, if you're gonna focus your final episode on anything, focus it on the culmination of your main character's relationship, obviously. But there's still all this other stuff that really needed some closure on.
Definitely. And I feel like, yes, acknowledge our main characters, because that's what our story is about, but there's too many things that could be explained left at the end.
Yeah.
Without any opportunity for a sequel.
Ooh, that's gonna hurt for a lot of these shows that we watch in the future, isn't it?
Yeah. I would love to see another story take place in this universe, even if it's just slice of life. I like Persicoms. I want to hear more. I want to hear their wins and their losses, their trauma and their joy. Like, I want more Persicoms.
So, it's not a thing in the anime. The Chobits manga is actually set in the same universe as a different Clamp series, Angelic Lair, I believe is what it's called, which is about, like, tiny, like, people having tiny robots that fight each other, basically. Like a shoujo Beyblade is how I've had it described to me.
Amazing. Is that it? Can we watch that?
Oh, that's definitely on the list, don't worry.
Oh, thank goodness. I'm very excited to watch that. That sounds like something we need.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, I would love, like, another story set in this little pocket universe that Clamp has. Or honestly, I would be totally down for like a Chobits, like a new Chobits anime. Like I remember, I never watched it, but I remember a couple of years ago we had the new Fruits Basket remake / adaptation.
Oh, yeah.
I would super be down for like a new Chobits anime that just, is better. I hate to say it so harshly, but like I would love a Chobits anime that's just better. Because I think it's totally doable, and I think a lot of people would really love it. Because the good parts of Chobits are so good.
The good parts of Chobits are so good. I could say that over and over, but the bad parts are just as bad.
Not even just that they're bad, it's that they actively make the show unwatchable in certain points.
Yeah.
Again, the porn man and his porn room.
Yeah.
Oh, I should, because I did say that there was 4. There was one final, like, unanswered question that kind of upset me. And it's gonna be, I'm gonna be super vague about it, so as no spoilers. But a certain character at one point has revealed that they have a secret hidden room in their house with, like, huge computer monitors and, like, a X-Men style computer helmet that comes down and everything. And it's a really cool reveal, real cool set piece. I don't think it's ever properly explained what that room is for.
I think it's not overtly explained, but it's inferred that it's for surveillance, specifically for Chi.
Okay, that I could believe. I do think they could have done a better job of telling the audience that, but I will concede that is not as big of an unanswered question as the other 3 I had.
No, that's fair. And Chobits is victim to blink and you miss it explanations in these last couple episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Simply because I don't think they allowed themselves enough time.
No, they definitely, and again, like all of the weird pacing fillery stuff that's in the anime is apparently the fault of the anime and wasn't in the manga. So there were some real weird choices made in how they adapted this story and like what they decided to focus on.
It makes me really want to check out the manga.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay, I think at this point we've probably covered everything that we want to about the actual show itself and our feelings on it for the most part without getting too heavy into spoilers. I want to do something I thought would be really, really fun, where I found a bunch of reviews of the Chobits anime from back when it was like, coming out and airing and whatnot. And I think it would be really, really fun to go back and just see, like, what did the before times people think of this,
Let me get my cane, my walker. I'm ready to listen.
Yeah, because this is from, again, the Chobits anime was 2002. These reviews are from 2003 and 2004. They come from Anime News Network, and they are specifically reviews of the Western DVD releases for Chobits, is what I was able to find. And I picked out 3 little, like, chunks of reviews that I think are both very interesting to look at and very relevant to how we've talked about it, if that makes sense.
Sounds good. Let's hear them.
So the first one comes from Alan Divers, a reviewer for Anime News Network, and this is on the first DVD, which was episodes 1 through 4. Alan says, "The animation contributes quite a bit to making Hideki come across as even more manic than he appears in the manga. It's these over-the-top reactions that help give that extra bit of charm to the characters of Chobits, keeping the show from being pigeonholed into yet another fan service show. While there is quite a bit of fan service, the wit and charm of the story prevent it from shifting directly into simple exploitation. After the first few episodes, the audience finds it easy to relate to Hideki and to genuinely like all the characters involved." That is definitely colored by the fact that they hadn't gotten to the porn man in the porn room. But
it absolutely is.
But I think I can agree. Like, I don't think anything that he said there is, well, I wouldn't want to say wrong, because it's all opinions, and I don't want to be, like, retroactively mean to someone from 21 years ago, but I can definitely agree with everything that he's saying to a point, if that makes sense.
I think I can too. I like that they mentioned that the show doesn't get pigeonholed for being a fan servicey show. Because if you just look at those first couple episodes, it totally feels like it could be.
It really does. I do think that, because also you gotta think of the other anime of the time period where, again, very, very horny, but I feel like normally, like, we can still definitely refer to Chobits as having a lot of fan service in it, but normally the objectification of the female character would come from the camera, quote unquote. Whereas a lot of the times in Chobits, most of the sexualization comes from Hideki being a horny little bastard, but she herself does not really get framed in a overtly horny way, which I will say makes it a little easier to bear with. Like, there's not a bunch of, like, upskirt shots and her being put in provocative poses, aside from, like, once or twice, and even those are pretty incidental.
Well, I think those shot choices are because we, the audience, aren't necessarily supposed to be horny for Chi, versus Hideki, who is, and is committed to that.
Oh, 100%.
Versus...
100%.
Oh, okay, yeah. I didn't want to have to defend that, thank you.
No, 100%, yeah. But regardless of, like, the method, there is still a lot of sexualization of Chi, and there are a lot of, like, very baseline fan servicey, like, oh, the pretty girl's boob touched my back when she hugged me, oh no.
Oh my gosh, her shirt slipped right off her shoulder.
There is a shot where Chi's boob is fully out, and I don't know if she canonically doesn't have nipples, or if that was just censorship on the anime's part, but as far as we're aware, she has no nipples.
I'd be inclined to believe that she doesn't, and that's something that a Persicom owner would have to purchase separately.
That's a custom job. Custom nipples.
Yeah.
The next review I found was from, I'm so sorry to Zach here, I'm going to mispronounce your last name, Zach Birchke from 2003. This was on the second DVD, episodes 5 to 8. It's easy to dismiss Chobits as misogynistic, fanboy-centric garbage, and indeed, these episodes certainly seem to be just that.
Oof.
For the patient or undemanding among you, if you can survive this disc, you'll be treated to what becomes a marvelous animated essay on man's love affair and fetishization of technology.
Oh, that is such a beautiful way to put that. Because, yeah, that's the bullshit episodes, and the unnecessarily horny ones, and the horrible porn room one.
So, there's another chunk from this review that I pulled. Of course, the problematic episode on the disc is episode 7, titled Chi Works. Chi is caught by a guy running a peep show and is suckered into nearly stripping for a series of cameras. The episode ends on a total cliffhanger after a flash of light bursts forth from Chi's power source, read symbol of virginity, when the creepy peep show guy tries to touch her. Other than not so subtle suggesting that the show has a theme about good girls waiting to find true love before giving up their purity, this episode serves very little purpose other than to fulfill the fantasy many fanboys obviously have. A much harsher take than Alan before.
That is a lot harsher, but I don't feel like it's uncalled for. Because if that's the only context you have, yes, that episode is gratuitous and disgusting and preachy.
I'll be honest, when I was watching, I didn't even clock the more preachier aspects about, like, the purity and, ooh, you gotta wait for the one you really love. But afterwards, I was, like, reading these reviews and I was like, wow, I'm fucking blind-ass idiot. That was super blatant and really gross.
I saw it with this watch when I was younger and I watched it the first time. It didn't faze me at all because that's the kind of culture I was surrounded by constantly.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah. I have to admit, I was very surprised by Zach's review here when I was looking through these old reviews, because, and I have to apologize to the anime watchers of the past, because I had this preconceived notion that this thing that I found gross and horny by today's standards, I was going to go back and I was going to read reviews of it, and the people of the time were going to be like super into it and like, yay, titties, I love anime. And I was, I feel bad that I was so surprised to see such a well thought out condemnation of the more upsetting aspects of the show, if that makes sense.
Well, and a lot of viewers just kind of put up with it for a lot of anime that came out at this time, which is so unfair, because a lot of us were looking for story back then, and we just kind of overlooked the gross parts. This is a conversation I've had many times with many different types of people, but like, it's that level of anime bullshit that you can put up with for a good story. And being able to condemn or identify or talk about the things that you might feel are unnecessary or, you know, just straight up overtly horny. It's the conversations are there, fortunately. It's not always just, yeah, this is horny and I'm into it.
Yeah. Yay, titties.
Yay, titties. Yeah, you said it. Yay, titties.
Last review I pulled was, again from Zach, our detractor, reviewing the 6th DVD, which has the last 5 episodes on the disc, 21 to 24. Wait, no, that's 4 episodes. I can't do math, apparently. And Zach says, what began as a fairly run-of-the-mill shonen romance series has become, in typical Clamp fashion, a genre-bending, thought-provoking story that unfortunately has already turned away high-minded anime fans thanks to a bunch of early episodes that focused more on panties than on substance. The end of Chobits winds up being something that would appeal to a huge range of anime fans. Anyone who appreciates a touching romance and understands drama punctuated by beautiful animation and high production values will love this. It's too bad that a metric ton of panties sent discriminating anime fans away screaming about 15 episodes ago. So, good stuff to say, while also acknowledging that it has a lot of problems.
And, I mean, we've covered this several times already, but I guess my wish is that we could see a Chobits reboot or redo that focuses on the pieces that we really, really enjoyed, that we clearly shared this enjoyment with people that watched it as it came out.
Right, like, again, I was really surprised to see how much these old reviews, and also keep in mind, like, these are single reviews from individuals. This is not a, like, massive community-wide consensus. Like, just because these two guys thought these things at the time does not mean that this was the popular notion. And, to be fair, probably wasn't, because as we said, at the time, Chobits was fucking huge. It was insanely popular.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's because it's got something for everybody. It just happens to have more horny bits than anything else.
Yeah. But, no, I was surprised to see just how reflected my own thoughts overall were in these older reviews that I found, especially from Mr. Zach Birchke, and just I get a sense from his writing that he also wished it could have been better instead of just outwardly disliking it.
As a 12 or 13-year-old that was not out, didn't really understand what being out was, my review would have been a lot different when I watched it versus now, because at that age, you know, I was a horny teenager, and I enjoyed all of the parts that were super annoying as an adult.
So, as a cap, I think we're definitely at the end of things now. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest question is, would you recommend Chobits to someone today?
It entirely depends on how old they are. If it's someone a little closer to our age, I might say that I do recommend it, with some caveats that it has a high level of anime bullshit. Pardon, horny anime bullshit.
If you say anime bullshit, people know you mean horny.
That's fair. But if it's someone younger, I will absolutely not recommend this. Wholesales, like, stop. Oh. Like, do not watch this.
Absolutely not, no.
Alright, Beanie, would you recommend this?
I'm honestly not sure. if I could recommend this to someone or not. Because, and I guess this is kind of the thesis statement of the whole episode, but like, it has very interesting and very well written side characters, and actually does tackle some like really interesting questions regarding humanity's relationship to technology. There's a lot about it I like, but also a very large chunk of the show is horribly dull. The main character is frustrating, and the sexualization of the childlike robot girl has aged the worst it possibly could, I think. Like you said, I think if I was going to recommend it to someone, it would have to be someone who I know has a very high threshold for anime bullshit. But even then, like, is the journey worth the destination?
Ooh.
And I don't think it is, unfortunately.
Would you put it that way? See, I'm looking at things from more of like a historical point of view, because this is considered one of the greats of anime. Like, as kind of crazy as that sounds.
When I ask, would you suggest it to someone today, I mean just as a flat out, like, if someone is asking for anime recommendations because they just need a new show to watch, would you say Chobits? My answer would probably be no, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think mine would also be no.
As a historical thing, like you were thinking, maybe? But that's a very specific context with which to recommend someone something, I think.
That's fair. I think I was thinking about it more so someone has approached me and asked if they should watch Chobits. Less me recommending Chobits as a, hey, what should I watch?
That's fair. I can understand that.
I would absolutely recommend picking up the art book, no matter who you are.
Even though I haven't read the manga yet, I almost want to go ahead and just say, hey, read the manga, because from what I heard, it is much better and doesn't have... I don't know where the manga stands on the unfortunate horniness scale of things, but it at least doesn't have all of the, like, slog that the anime does, from what I've read. So even that, I would say maybe gives it a nice little recommendation point.
I have just looked up how many volumes Chobits is, and I'm surprised to say that there's only 8 volumes.
Oh, shit.
So it's a very short read, whatever is in there.
I could knock that shit out in an afternoon trip to Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, definitely.
Just sit in the fucking comfy chair that they have by the window.
That sounds so nice. What if we do that?
Now, if you will permit me, I would like to take this chance to recommend a different anime.
Oh? What are you going to recommend to us?
I had this thought in my head multiple times as I was watching through Chobits, where I was looking at, here is the concept of a man finding a mysterious young girl and placing himself in a role where he has to take care of her, and discovering the mysteries about her past, and them growing together as people. And I'm like, wow, this is just like Hinamatsuri. Hinamatsuri is an absolutely fantastic anime from, I want to say, like 2019, 2020, very, very recent, but it is a stellar anime. It's about this Yakuza member who discovers this young girl with psychic powers who is a government experiment and basically becomes her dad. It's super fucking cute. It's incredibly heartwarming. All of the side characters are amazing, have great stories. It is fucking hilarious. It is one of the funniest fucking anime I have ever watched. And it really is like that base concept of Chobits, but just done better in almost every aspect. It's funnier. It's significantly more consistent in its pacing. The main character is more enjoyable. It's not horny in the slightest. And it does the thing that I caught myself thinking about Chobits as I watched, where I was like, damn, I would like this so much more if Hideki was trying to be more like her dad or a big brother than if he was trying to fuck her. And Hinamatsuri is just kind of better Chobits, I'm gonna say. Like, watch Hinamatsuri. It's great.
I'll accept your recommendation, and I'll probably check it out. So even though I can't say that I recommend Chobits, I did enjoy my time watching it. I probably won't do it again, though.
I enjoyed parts of my time watching it.
Yeah, parts.
And I think that's probably a pretty good capping off point to our little discussion of Chobits that we've had.
I think so, too.
Thank you very much to everyone for listening. We hope you enjoyed your time with us here on the first episode of the Weeb Years.
I had so much fun. I hope you guys did, too. Thanks, Beanie.
You're welcome, MaeMae. You can catch us on Twitter at WeebYears, and we will see you again next time for Darker Than Black. If you enjoyed your time with us, please, drop us a like, drop us a follow, share the podcast with others you think might be interested in talking about elder millennial anime. It is the main way that we will be able to grow, and we would really, really appreciate it.
Come sit on the porch and scream about anime with us.
In our rocking chairs, waving our canes at all the young people watching Boruto and what's something else that's popular right now? Solo leveling.
Yes, perfect. Free Ren.
Free Run is really good, though. Okay, this is getting off topic. Anyway, thank you for joining us, and, yeah, have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.